Let's start with some big questions. Where does Gateshead come from? When did Gateshead become a town, an area of local and regional importance? What is Gateshead's history? All these can be answered and explored in a fun, informative and interactive way. Why not, as the Riverside Park Association breathes new life into this area, use it as an opportunity to transform a local walk along the Tyne into a stroll through time. My proposal is the creation of an adventure walk, using and adding to the already in place information notice boards along the walk. These notice boards would be expanded to incorporate a much wider spectrum of Gateshead's history, rather than a narrow industrialist perception of the region focusing on the last 200 years. This adventure walk would enable locals and tourists alike to explore Gateshead's history whilst following an easy-to-follow arrow system from one notice board to the next. Not only would each notice board mark a new moment or era of history, but it would also ease the navigational issues of traversing the hilly area. This would enable people to actually experience the Riverside Park and not get lost or simply follow the path adjacent to the Tyne. These notice boards, I would propose, would additionally be multi-usage. They would contain texts and images describing and explaining particular aspects of history. Alongside this text, I would propose a QR code being attached, which could be scanned using a smartphone to access an app. This app could then have multiple options on it, ranging from listening to the information on the notice boards as you go, providing a forum for those interacting to give feedback and perhaps expand the historical experience, and to provide small mini-games to captivate and educate young and old minds alike. Through this multidimensional usage, this information is provided in a variety of ways to appeal to as wide an audience as possible. It is time now to take a trip along the Riverside Park and see how this adventure walk can materialise. We start our journey below the Tyne Bridge at the Rise and Fall Archway. Here, Gateshead's very early story will be discussed and explored. Unfortunately, there is very little evidence surrounding Gateshead's dawn. There is the potential that its origins lie within Roman Britain. This speculation aims at Gateshead largely being agricultural property under the careful watch of the Roman fort found in Newcastle and Hadrian's Wall further north. There is also additional evidence for Roman activity around the Gateshead region, which will be revisited at a later site along the walk. I propose the start to this historical exploration at this end of the Riverside Park due to its closeness to the Gateshead Heritage Centre, an institution whom I've contacted and believe would be eager to create a long friendship with the Riverside Park initiative. Taking another step in time leads us to a second theory for how Gateshead came to be. This theory is provided by Venerable Bede in his Ecclesiastical History of the English, dated sometime between 673 and 735. It is during late antiquity, the Dark Ages, that Bede refers to a character named Uta. Uta is identified in chapter 21 as the abbot of the monastery at the place called Gateshead. It is possible that Uta is the same character as referred to in chapter 15, a man of great worth, sincerity, and accordingly honoured by all. If this is the case, Uta was entrusted with bringing back Enfalda, back from Kent, to be married to Northumbria's king, Oswiu. This positions Uta as a man of potentially great importance and wealth. The importance of this lies in that Uta is a cleric, at a time when Christianity was only just permeating into North Brittonish society. Perhaps being granted the title of Abbot of Gateshead was a reward. However, Bede in his writings does not refer to Gateshead as a ville, Latin for town or settlement. Instead, it is likely the region was occupied by the monastery, sometimes speculated to be Holy Trinity Church, and the surrounding agricultural land. Moving on now into the High Middle Ages, the period commonly determined as between 1000 and 1250 AD, it is during this period which Gateshead is recognised as truly coming together as an established settlement. However, it was no longer identified as being Northumbrian, as stated in Bede's work, or as it is now. Instead, the area was under the control of the Prince Bishops of Durham, established by Norman rule coming to the British Isles. The most notable of these bishops to Gateshead was Bishop Hugh de Puisieux, Bishop of Durham from 1154 to 1195. The existing evidence suggests he saw Gateshead as having the potential for economic activity and growth, hence creating a triangular system with Darlington to the south and Wearmouth, Sunderland to the east. This evidence is a forest charter dated to the late 12th century, granting the bishops of Durham a monopoly over Gateshead's forests for wood and hunting. Additionally to this is the creation of the Baldon Book under Bishop Puisieux, likely drawn up in 1183. The Baldon Book followed a very similar purpose to the Domesday Book of 1086, whereby any property was recorded and valued. Gateshead was valued at 60 marks in total at the creation of the Baldon Book. This demonstrates a drastic shift for Gateshead as now being a settlement of importance and worthy of being recorded. As we leave the Middle Ages and enter the early modern period, Gateshead is becoming a small economic powerhouse in the north. The area boasted several coal states, a strong agricultural base including cattle, and an established connection with Wearmouth ports, giving Gateshead access to salt pans and a North Sea port with which it could trade on the continent with. However, it is during the 16th and 17th centuries when Gateshead becomes engaged with England's national affairs. The first of these is the Pilgrimage of Grace in 1536 and the subsequent dissolution of the monasteries under the reign of Henry VIII. Until now, the North had been allowed to largely operate independently of the capital. With this in mind, it is the result of the Pilgrimage of Grace leading to the creation of the Council of the North, meaning increased observation and control from London. The dissolution of the monasteries also allowed for the expansion of Gateshead's gentry class, and in turn its industry, mostly of coal and iron. The second event plunging Gateshead into England's national affairs is the Northern Rebellion of 1569, under Elizabeth I's reign. This event saw the Catholic nobles of Durham rebelling against their Protestant queen. It is in this affair that Gateshead differentiated from its mother bishopric of Durham for service to the crown. Gateshead stood alongside Newcastle as a royalist centre, which would continue into the next century. It is this royalist affinity which brings us to our third flashpoint, the English Civil Wars. For Gateshead, it is only the first English Civil War from 1642 to 1646 which is of importance. This is because of William Cavendish, the first Earl of Newcastle and royalist commander of the North. He was based in the Newcastle Gateshead area due to their heavy metal industries and armoury manufacturing, which allowed him to succeed in occupying County Durham, Lincolnshire and to some extent Yorkshire alongside Northumberland. We arrive now at the halfway point at the King Edward VII Bridge. This bridge was built in 1906 for the purpose of aiding the transportation of raw materials such as coal, iron and steel from Gateshead into the armouries of Newcastle. Through this bridge, the economic growth of Gateshead symbiotically with Newcastle can be explored. However, through a report from the contractors, this bridge's construction also gives evidence of Roman interest in the Gateshead region. This interest is in the form of small-scale coal excavations and small river driftways. This is not the end of my proposal for an adventure walk in the Riverside Park, as I believe it would be valuable to continue exploring Gateshead's 19th and 20th century history, the impacts of the Industrial Revolution, the World Wars, and Gateshead as a hotbed for the creation of association football, to name a few examples. Instead, in this presentation I purposely focused on the earlier history of Gateshead, as I believed it is understudied and overlooked. It is through this earlier history that Gateshead is not permanently a shadow of Newcastle, but instead has its own important, independent and flourishing history. A history that can be tracked to see Gateshead growing with, rather than against, Newcastle.